Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, along with Kennington Smith of the Des Moines Register. A lot of questions already about my injury, so we might as well get that out of the bag. For those that don't know, broke my leg, tore some ankle ligaments on Friday, like less than an hour after I was home from my flight from East Lansing or from Michigan. Just stupid injury. And it's been kind of funny, Kennington. Uh, Dozens and dozens of just people, text groups, social media, texts, whatever, have shared their own stories about dumb injuries. I mean, I was just playing around with my daughter, tripped, fell, and now I have a broken leg and can't help you out as much. I can't be, but my leg is over here, elevated to the right. You can't see that, but kind of stinks. But I feel sorry for letting you down. But I'm gonna keep doing the best I can in the meantime.
Yeah, no apologies needed. Like, I'm the one who should be apologizing to you. Like, I'm really sorry that this happened, honestly, like, especially, with young kids and you live out in the Des Moines area needing to kind of drive around, especially coming out to Iowa City on occasion. And we have a lot of drivable road games this month.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, nah, get well soon. Kick your feet up, no pun intended. And I got this. I mean, this is true next man up mentality that we're working with here. So yeah, like I'm not tripping at all. Like get well, do what you need to do, and I'll pick up the slack when needed. But you were definitely missed at the Rutgers game yesterday. A lot of the Iowa media contingency that was there came by, and they're like, oh, let Chad know that we're thinking of him, hope he gets well soon, and all of that. And it's just funny because like the day that you told me when it happened, I called you and I was like, oh yeah, like it's kind of a crazy day for me. And then you called me back. You said, well, I got a crazy story for you. And then after you told me, I was like, yeah,
Uh,
my story's not as crazy anymore after after hearing that. But now you're a soldier. You worked the game yesterday. Did a five takeaways column that's up on Hawk Central, and we're potting the next morning. So you are hardest working man in Iowa sports media. Don't let anybody tell you any different.
well, it is a big week for Hawkeye sports, and just to kind of recap the final injury. Thank you for all that, by the way, and thank you everyone who is sharing your concern and thoughts and prayers. And it does suck. I feel really helpless. I feel horrible for my wife, who has to pretty much do everything now. I'm kind of more. I do a lot of like the grocery shopping and cooking and like the driveway, when it snowed, like all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. Yesterday, I taught my son, who's 12, how to use the snowblower. I was like on crutches, like out, on the driveway, and it's so funny, like watching him like kind of fishtail along, like he doesn't know what he's doing yet. And, like the momentum's like carrying him around. And it wasn't much snow, but I thought it was a good time to practice, like
Right.
so just like little thing. And like I have no idea how to like I have to really think ahead if I'm gonna like create like make any food. So I have something in the microwave already for my wife that's just in there that I can heat up later. But I can't like carry eggs, to unless I put them in my pocket because I have to. It's just weird. You have to think about so much. Anyway, I'm just looking over the spot where I fell right now, and it's the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And it made me think of Spencer Lee last year, and all student athletes we cover that go through serious injuries, and to think like I have no use of my leg. I can't use it. There would be no chance for me to put weight on it. To think that he went through an ACL tear and actually won a national championship in wrestling, like it was a
That's crazy.
mind-boggling thing to hear at the time, but to feel the fact that you can't even use your leg and that he went out and did that. I know it's not the same exact injury, but he couldn't use his leg and he won an NCAA title. I don't know. It just gives me a great appreciation for the medical teams, at these schools, and also just the athletes that recover from these injuries. That happens all the time, and they come back from them and they play again. I don't know. It's just new appreciation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you see those kind of stories a lot, even with injuries not as serious as like a broken leg. It could be, sprained ankle, pulled hamstring, like when you're not at that athletic level, something like that happens to you, it's like, okay, like I can only imagine what it would take to have this type of injury and then perform at this high of level. So 100% I agree with you. And it just kind of puts everything into perspective when, we're kind of talking about these athletes and kind of what they're going through on the day to day, even the ones that don't show up on the injury report and are going through those not kind of nagging injuries and still playing hurt or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and to be clear, it is my right leg, so I can't drive, and that's really really sucky for a lot of reasons because I can't even take my son to the 0.9 mile drive to school. Anyway, just I feel bad for everyone I'm in position in the next 2 months or however long this is. Anyway, let's talk about Hawkeyes. That was the 5-minute injury segment. We won't shortchange it. We'll give you 20 good minutes here on basketball, 10 on football. Our first topic today, Kennington, is the Hawkeyes post their fifth quad one win of the year. As you know, last year it took a long time to even get one quad one win for this team. You were in the arena yesterday. What stood out to you as the Hawkeyes beat Rutgers 93-82 at Carver to against the second place Scarlet Knights, season sweep against Rutgers?
Yeah, the first thing that I think of to your point about how long it took to get a quad one win last year, Iowa did not have a quad one win on this day a year ago. Their first one came in February, I believe, when they went to Ohio State. But what stuck out to me the most was just how they responded after that slow start. That's been something that's been a consistent theme throughout this season, particularly late December, early January, was not getting off to great starts and having to dig themselves out of a hole. You wonder how they would come out after two tough losses on the road, and you figured that they would have some home court advantage and they would ride that momentum, but it didn't look like that early on. There were a lot of turnovers, but they started 0 for 3 from the field. And to not score in the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game and then still end up with 93 points against Rutgers, who has one of the stingiest defenses in the country. And you look up at the end of the game, and Iowa has 93 points, and they hold the two highest point totals against Rutgers this season, 93 points on Sunday and then 76 points when they played them a few weeks ago in Piscataway. So really impressed by the offensive output. Obviously shot better from three, obviously shot better from the free throw line, but I think just how they responded after that slow start, after those tough losses, and then who they executed against, I think also deserves some praise as well.
Yeah, as I wrote in my column, and we'll get to some of the contributions, like all 8 guys that played. I know Mulvey get in 10 seconds, but I'm not counting that. All 8 guys that played really gave nice contributions, and I think we could start with, honestly, Aaron Eulis, who continues to. That's his third straight double-digit game after one double-digit scoring game in his first 18. I was really impressed with the versatility of what he did, driving to the hoop, mid-range, outside shots. We've been talking about this one position, or the backcourt. They needed like a Perkins or a Eulis or a Bowen to step up and be good. And it was Perkins against who was it? Maryland, right?
Maryland.
The big, yeah. Perkins really stepped up against Maryland, but Eulis has been there late. I know there's been some frustrating turnovers and free throws, but that's a guy that we've talked about others emerging. Like Sanford emerging, Connor kind of stepping up his game, Rebracha having a season, beyond expectations, and now kind of Eulis, I thought stood out to me and kept them kind of in the game for a while yesterday. And I know we're going to get to Patrick here in a minute, but I think a shout out to Aaron Eulis for what he's doing for this team right now.
100%. His aggressiveness in these last few games has been notable. And it's interesting when you hear his teammates talk, you hear Fred McCaffrey talks, all of them say that this aggressive, hot, scorer is in him. It's just a matter of getting it out of him and then doing it consistently. We started to see that over these last few games. To your point, the ironic part is as his scoring has increased, what we've known Aaron to be, which is a rock steady ball handler and a good free throw shooter, has kind of gone a little bit wayward with the 4 turnovers at Ohio State and the turnovers against Michigan State and the missed free throws. But yesterday was a game where he put it all together with the scoring. He handled the ball well, only had 1 turnover, really stabilized the offense. And when you think about what that potential could mean for Iowa's season, and that's not to say he's going to score 15 to 18 points every game, but if he can be a double-digit scorer consistently, continue to distribute the ball, keep his turnovers down, and then we know he's a good defender, you feel really good about that backcourt position. And another name that I'll throw out there, and I'm sure we would have gotten to him at some point, was Josh Dix, who was huge yesterday, knocking down shots, and he's somebody who's really emerged at that backcourt spot, and it seemed to be getting a lot of responsibility from Fran McCaffrey and the coaching staff. But definitely have to give a shout out to Aaron Ewers to kind of how he's ascended, and it's came at a time that's been needed with Patrick out. They've needed more offense. They've needed somebody to step up. The front court has been playing well. You just needed a little bit more from the back court to kind of get Iowa to a point where you felt good about both position groups on the team, and you're starting to feel that as February nears.
Yeah, our second segment's going to kind of focus on Patrick McCaffery and kind of what this means for the team going forward. So let's just put a hold on Patrick. We'll get to him. But how about Chris Murray? I mean, just like he's like such an afterthought. He scores 24 points with 6 boards and 12 in each half. I thought it was a really important game for him to get kind of back on track, so to speak, because that Michigan State game was so strange because he scored right out of the gate in the second half to give him 10 points, and then he only scored 1 free throw in the last 19:45 in East Lansing. I was really frustrated by the good defense and physical defense they put on him up in East Lansing, and wasn't looking for a shot. I thought that it was good to see him kind of get back on track and just do Chris Murray things, because that when he's on, this team is tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like Keegan last year, where you almost take for granted that he's going to score 24 to 30 points in a game, and it's just kind of one of those things where it's just so smooth, so fluid. And that game yesterday was, kind of contentious, and there was, scoring here, scoring there, and everybody was contributing. Like you said, it was a balanced scoring attack, and he looked at the score sheet, and Chris leads all scorers with 24 points. And the variety of ways that he was scoring yesterday, and I know he's shown that throughout the season, but yesterday specifically was a really good example where he got 2 steals and he was able to take it coast to coast and score with his offhand and scoring from the inside, mid-range, outside. In that type of game, I think that he, continued to kind of show his NBA skill set. And for as much as he's did on the offensive end with the 24 points, he also had 3 blocks yesterday, which I guess that maybe was a quiet stat. I didn't even realize it until I looked down the stat sheet, 2 steals, 3 blocks to go along with 24 points. So he's doing it on both sides of the court. I think that he has firmly established himself as one of the best players in the country. But like you said, with everything else going on with the team and all of these other storylines, it's just like you kind of assume that, Chris is going to be elite game in and game out. But it was nice to see him get back to that aggressive nature. Like you said, against Michigan State, that kind of went a little wayward in the second half. So it's good to see him especially against a team like Rutgers that, similarly to Michigan State, long athletic defenders, was going to be physical, was going to try to get him off of his mark, that he quickly, learned from that. It was able to adjust and put on the Chris Murray performance that we've come accustomed to this season.
So Iowa moves up to 35 from 42 to 35 in the net, also 35 in KenPom. So again, well positioned. I thought it was such a huge game, and this is what I wrote about Kennington. That Iowa could have, if Iowa loses this game to Rutgers, which you would kind of understand. I mean, Rutgers is the second place team in the conference and really tough and plays physical. But Hawkeyes get to the halfway mark of the conference season, 5-5. They're now 4-1 at home in conference play, right, and 1-4 on the road with the one win at why am I blanking? Rutgers, yeah. Rutgers. Okay. That my mind should still be good. But if you kind of need to take care of business at home and pick off a few on the road, because that's why this week to me was so important. You don't want to fall behind in that balance. And now Tuesday night comes a huge game, huge, against Northwestern. It's tomorrow. I mean, it's happening soon. This whole week is so important. I mean, Northwestern now 6-3 in the Big Ten Conference, and this is also an opportunity to move up in the standings. I mean, Iowa's right there. 5-5 in the league. Now just half game behind, or a game behind Rutgers. They're 6-4. I mean, this is a chance to get to 6-5, knock Northwestern down to 6-4. Then everybody in the league would have, except Purdue, would have at least 4 losses, and you would have 5 losses. So just another huge game tomorrow night. It'll be a quad 2 game because Northwestern is right around 40 in the net, I believe. So outside that top 1 through 30. And then Saturday's game against Illinois, let me check their net ranking. I believe they're in the top 30.
Yeah. Well, to your point about
They're 26, so that'll be a quad 1 game. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, to your point about Northwestern, I mean, they have to be definitely one of the best stories in the Big Ten, if not one of the best stories in the country this year, what they're doing. And that was the talking point last night at the end of Fran's presser, was what's impressed him about Northwestern. And he said they lost some guys. They lost really good players. And Chris Collins didn't panic. He likes what he had within the program, and they've responded with a really good season to this point. And it's really kind of interesting when you think about the trajectory of both of these teams after that postponement, where Iowa, dropped 2 in a row. Then they had a bounce back win. Northwestern has won 3 in a row, I believe. So they're coming into Carver red hot. So going to be a really big game. It's going to be really important for Iowa to continue this momentum, because the Illinois game obviously is going to be very tough on Saturday. It always is. So Iowa's performed well at home. The shooting mojo seems to be working well inside of Carver. So continue that momentum, get to 6-5, and set up a pretty monster showdown this weekend.
Did you see the Connor McCaffrey tweet video that I put out after the Michigan State game?
Yeah,
up there. He did not hold back. He's like, I don't care about your kids. You get to Carver on Tuesday night. I don't want to hear about your kids. Yeah. You dropped a few little swears in there.
I'm about to say, yeah, this is a family show. I don't know if we can exactly repeat word for word what he said, but he's challenging the fans to get out there. And, I agree. I mean, this is a critical stretch for Iowa. The team really needs to feed off of that home court because, like you said, they have struggled on the road. I thought the crowd was pretty decent yesterday. I was a little skeptical leading up to tip-off. I was like, man, this whiteout does not seem so white. There's a lot of empty seats in there. Then when Patrick enters the game, everybody's on their feet. I'm like, okay, it looks a lot different when everybody is standing up. And then, when Carver starts to get a little lit and the fans get into it, it's loud in there. Even at half capacity, it gets to be a little noisy. So, no, the crowd was great yesterday. And I would expect 2 great crowds for the other games. The Chris Street rescheduled Remembrance game tomorrow night. And then Illinois, obviously, is going to be packed out. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a sellout.
Yeah, for sure. Dargan Southard, our producer, who's going to be pit filling in for me here and there, maybe at Kirk Ferentz's presser on Wednesday. Says, I don't want to hear about your broken leg, he says. So I'm sorry, Connor. I don't know if I'm not going to be there Tuesday. I'm sorry. Got the ortho appointment tomorrow about surgery. So anyway, let's move on to the next. It was funny that when that video, so I was, okay. Yeah. I know I'm not supposed to puff my chest, but I was the only Iowa media there in East Lansing. I know that's a sore subject, but it was funny after I interviewed Connor. One of the PR guys for Iowa was like, you're not going to use that, are you? And I was like, well, Connor said he wanted me to put it out there, and I told him I would. So I'm not going to break my word. Like Connor wanted that out there. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, so why shouldn't it be out there? I mean, I think that people should appreciate the authenticity that Carter McCaffrey speaks with. And again, he's right. Players want fans in the stands because obviously when Iowa goes on the road, you see the type of advantage that it gives their opponents, Ohio State and Michigan State. They would like that same advantage when they play at home as well.
Yeah, and there's having been there on Thursday and listening to Philip and Connor in particular talk about the crowd, there's no question that the home crowd won that game for the Spartans on Thursday. The Hawkeyes said they were rattled. I mean, they were shooting those free throws into that student section that was just going bonkers. Go for 6 for 13 from the line in a 2-point game. That was such a killer. And obviously, Izzo got a lot of calls. So, all right, let's move on to the next topic. We've gone a little long here, but again, what does topic 2, Kennington, is what does Patrick McCaffrey's return to the team mean? Now we're seeing this team at full strength, kind of like once McKenna Warnock returns for the women, you're going to see the Iowa women at their full strength. Now you are not. Yesterday was the best lineup that Iowa can put forward. This has not been a healthy team most of the year. When you think about Connor McCaffrey's hand injury, you think about Chris Murray's foot injury that lingered for almost a month, and obviously 6 games with Patrick being out with anxiety. Tony Perkins earlier in the year had that thigh issue, which he missed a game, I believe, but it definitely impacted his play. Now that we're seeing the full healthy Iowa team, as healthy as they've been, what do you make of kind of the collection, how this roster is constructed for now the second half of the Big Ten schedule, which starts tomorrow?
Yeah, and I would throw in something else. And I know this wasn't an injury, but Peyton Sanford's slump was a big part of the struggles as well at the beginning part and the middle part of the year. And he started to break out of that as well. So when you think about all of those factors together, you feel good about Iowa being kind of in that top 5-7 range of the Big Ten, where we had them predicted at the beginning of the season. And I think that with Patrick, the way that he was able to provide a spark off of the bench yesterday, and we talked a lot about this, was what was going to be his role when he came back. And that he played 13 minutes. Fran said that he thought that he could have gone a little bit longer, but his legs kind of, went away. It's obviously his first game back. But if you can get Patrick in that 15 to 20-minute range for a few games and ramp him back up, especially if Aaron Eulis is going to continue to score in the double-digit range at that point guard position, all of a sudden you feel like you have pretty good frontline starters with Eulis, Perkins, Connor, Chris, Phillip, and then the 3 guys coming off the bench, Dodge Dix handling the ball, Peyton Sanford, and Patrick McCaffery as kind of a big 3 off of the bench. You have a pretty good rotation of 8 guys that are going to be able to defend. They're going to be able to switch, obviously going to be able to score the ball. The big question is going to continue to be what happens when the front court gets into foul trouble. But that's been a question even entering this season. That's been a question for the entire year. So something they're going to have to continue to work through. But you feel good about what Iowa could do in terms of versatility with their lineups, offensively. Now Chris Murray can come out for a few more minutes because Patrick can be in there to stabilize the offense. It just gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of just kind of game planning and the decisions that Fran is going to make in the game. So obviously, Iowa's still going to have to continue to play well. They're going to have to put the product on the court. They're not out of the woods yet by any means because they're still 5-5 with a lot of big games to go. But feels like entering into the most important part of the year that Iowa has the pieces that it needs to kind of make that second half run that they're looking for.
One of the interesting statistics yesterday, Kennington, was Philip Rebracha playing only 19 and a half minutes. That was kind of a byproduct of the way Rutgers was playing. Iowa was able to go a little smaller at times. But I think that shows that, Philip had been playing 35-ish minutes per game before Patrick returned. So I think Patrick's return does offer that flexibility. I would say I would still like to see Peyton Sanford in the starting lineup and maybe have Perkins come off the bench. You can't take Eulis out right now, but I just to have Sanford and Patrick both coming off the bench when they both have similar skill sets, I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's obviously how he did it yesterday. And, it worked out yesterday. I mean, it's a minor quibble. And then the guy that looks like he might be losing out on playing time is DeSante Bowen. Yesterday was the first time all year he did not get into the game. And I think that's a credit to obviously how Aaron News was playing and how Josh Dix is playing. We've talked about that. But sometimes Fran has a tendency to play too many guys. And I think yesterday was perfect to me. And that's nothing. DeSante is going to have his days. There's no question about that. He's an athletic kid. He's just got to bulk up a little bit and get used to the physical play of the Big Ten. He's going to be a good one. But these 8 guys right now, I really like the versatility, like you said. Connor plays the most minutes of anybody yesterday, and I think that is fine. I mean, 35 minutes. He's just a stabilizing guy out there in every way. And I loved how early in the game, some of his double teams, he was swatting the ball away from Rutgers, and Rutgers committed 15 turnovers in the first 21 minutes of the game. That was a credit to the active defense that Iowa showed. And, Patrick poked in there for a steal. Connor was right there. Perkins played 33 plus minutes. Anyway, I just like the 8. I like this 8. I picked them to be a contender all year. I still think they're one of the best teams in the Big Ten when healthy. I do.
Yeah. And to the point about DeSante, Steve Pikiell said something yesterday that I think is applicable to this situation. We said, when you play in the Big Ten or anybody, there are some games where there are going to be good matchups and some games that are going to be bad matchups. Rutgers stylistically was not a very good matchup for Bowen in terms of where he is right now, because they're going to press, they're going to play physical, they're going to get up in him. That could have led to turnovers and points off of those turnovers for Rutgers. So there are going to be games where Bowen is going to play and the matchups are going to be a little bit more favorable, but that was one that was just not tailored to him right now. We saw that when they went on the road to Rutgers, where he kind of got in for a few minutes and they were able to kind of speed him up a little bit. I know he had one turnover and dribbled himself out of trouble that led to a layup in another possession. So to your point, I like the 8, and I think that what you're seeing right now with Josh Dix is you see what he can do when he's playing really well when the shot is falling. But I think that he has an established floor, which is even if he's not scoring the ball, he's going to play really well on defense. He's likely not going to turn the ball over either. So I think that that's probably the main difference right there between those two. But, to your point, they're going to need DeSante at some point this season. And, he's just got to be ready for that opportunity when it comes.
Yeah, Connor's final line was 11 points, 6 assists, no turnovers. He's just so solid. He hits that dagger 3 at the end as well. And just the fact that he can hit the 3 now, he's not been like great at it this year, but just not enough to keep people honest is so huge. It's so big. And so I just like that veteran poise too. I was going to get somebody good on the road down the stretch. Let's just real quick, Kennington, just look at these 10 games and just kind of in our minds. Maybe this would be a good topic for our Wednesday show, but I kind of think Wednesday is going to be dominated by football. But let's look at the last 10 games and just kind of W and L it real quick between us. Northwestern at home, Illinois at home. I'm going to say a split.
Yeah. That sounds like a split.
Yeah. Purdue next week. Purdue on the road on Thursday. And then Minnesota on the road next Sunday. I'm going to say a split there as well.
Same.
Yeah. So then at that point you are 7. If you can get, and that's good. If you're an Iowa fan, I think you take that 7-7 going into the final 6 games. Not to say Iowa couldn't be 8-6 after that. I really think that's possible. And I'm not even going to put past that they can't beat Purdue. They gave them all they could handle last year without Keegan Murray over in West Lafayette. But let's look at these last 6 games now. Let's say Iowa can, is 7-7 with their final 6. Home against Ohio State. I like that. I like Iowa's chances to get them back. At Northwestern. At Wisconsin. Maybe you got to steal one of those, right?
I think they can steal Wisconsin. I think they're going to be Northwest. I think they'll sweep Northwestern, and I think they can steal Wisconsin.
Wow,
So
wow. I mean, it's
what
what I'm, and
what
then
are the
it's home.
last what are the last two games? Because in my mind, I think I'm having them at 10-7 right now, going into the last
Yeah,
three games.
home against Michigan State, at Indiana, and home against Nebraska. So
I think they could be in my. I think at best 12-8. At worst, I think they'll be 500, 10-10.
wow, at worst 500. That, I mean, they got to stay healthy, but yeah, I think I like this team to go. I'm going to say 8-2 at home. I think they lose one, maybe this week. Illinois is always annoying and tough, but I agree. I think they get Northwestern tomorrow night. I think there's enough little momentum here. Northwestern's coming in hot. Iowa's going to be taking them very seriously, and that'll be fun. If Iowa can sweep this week and get to 7-5 in the Big Ten, then you're just playing with house money, and you just can't lose that Minnesota next Sunday, a week from Sunday, I should say. You just can't lose that game. But I like. This is an NCAA tournament team as of today. This is an NCAA tournament team, and their resume is NCAA tournament viable, and they haven't been healthy. That's why I think it's exciting going down the stretch here.
Yeah, I think that at this point, that Eastern Illinois loss has been washed away. And I know that at that point, that was a potential season defining loss. And then obviously the skid that they went on afterwards didn't inspire a lot of confidence about where Iowa would be probably at this point in the season. And then especially looking ahead to the Big Ten tournament and potentially Selection Sunday. But I think Iowa is firmly in the NCAA tournament field, and then barring an epic collapse, I would expect them to be playing in the tournament.
Let's move on to football. Kennington, we've gone over our usual 30 minutes. I know that there were a lot of requests for injury updates, so we put that at the front end. Let's do like 6-7 minutes here on football. We'll have a lot more time to do that later this week after Kirk Ferentz's news conference on Wednesday, or anticipated news conference. Rusty Feth, the O-lineman from Miami of Ohio. That was we talked about that on the radio show last week, but a really, really important get for this Hawkeye team. He commits to the Hawkeyes on Sunday. He will not be here till June because he has to graduate to transfer from Miami of Ohio. But familiarity with George Barnett, started 34 games, second team All-MAC, gives Iowa a veteran presence, a known commodity on the interior of its offensive line.
Yeah, somebody that Iowa, I mean, they had to get. I think the connections were too strong, and the need was too great for Iowa to not close the deal right before that class registration deadline came up, which I think is today. Well, he's not enrolling, but still, just to be able to kind of get him in this last weekend. Well, the dead period is about to begin, I believe, in February, so it was still a crucial weekend to kind of get him into the fold. But you think about the potential combinations on the offensive line, and Feth is somebody who has played guard and played center. So you think about if Logan Jones takes a step forward in spring practice, then you could put Feth at guard opposite of Connor Colby, and you would pretty much have your five: Richmond, Colby, Jones, Feth, and Dejon Parker. Or if Logan Jones does not take that step forward that the coaches are expecting him to make, then Feth could be right there in the competition for the center spot. And then you have decisions to make at guards where we know Iowa rotated several guys and you feel good about the tackles. So I say all that to say Feth is a big addition, but I think that this creates a spotlight on Logan Jones. Like, I think this is like the spring of Logan Jones. Whatever step forward he takes is going to kind of dictate how Feth is rotated and used on the offensive line, and ultimately what the competition looks like in summer going into fall camp.
And then, I think Logan will I think they still believe in him at center, so maybe Rusty becomes a starting guard. I mean, between Feth and Dejon Parker, I think you've got two potential day one starters. Obviously, the O-line has to improve. I think you bank on, right now it looks like they're banking on, two portal additions and development to improve this offensive line, which was such a major issue. And now there's also the Nick Jackson element. That's another one, linebacker from Virginia, all ACC, led the ACC in tackles. Obviously, Iowa has a huge need at inside linebacker. He visited over the weekend. A lot of schools in the country want him. He's got some big names after him. So we'll see what happens there on that front. Did you get to see him at Carver? I saw he was at the game. I wasn't there, obviously, but it's Sunday at Carver. But any comments on Nick Jackson, Kennington?
Yeah, I did not see him at the game, but to your point, really big need at linebacker just to be able to get somebody else proven that you can match with Jay Higgins, and then at that point, you're just focusing on, okay, who can kind of fill that that Leo spot, cash spot, where we go, 3-4 and those things. So another huge area that is going to be under the microscope in spring practice, which probably hasn't been the case in the last few years, just because they've had really high level players at that position. So, Seth Wallace, that's going to be an interesting spring presser. Last few spring pressers, Jack Campbell is great, and Seth Benson is great, and Justin Jacobs is emerging, and we got to get him into the fold, and we feel good about the guys behind them. Well, the guys behind them are now in the forefront. So really interested to see how that competition shakes out in spring practice.
All right, last topic, Kennington. This is from a text grouper, Larry. Sent me this question, and it gets to kind of the weighting on offensive coordinator. He says, for Iowa football, of the 3 possible scenarios listed below, what are the probabilities they will actually happen? I'll read all 3 of them, and we can kind of each give our own take. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Number 1, Brian Ferentz leaves the program, which causes changes to the staff. Number 2, Brian stays with no change in responsibilities. Number 3, Brian stays, but changes to responsibilities are implemented by Kirk. So where are you feeling on that? And then I'll weigh in.
I'm going to go, if I'm looking at this on like a
pie chart. It has to add up to 100. It has to add up to 100. Yeah.
50, I would say 50% he leaves and there are changes. 50% he stays and there are no changes. 0% he stays and there are changes, like he gets demoted or something, with the scheme or something like that. I think that at this point it could go either way. I've been very firm on the stance that I do think a change is going to happen, just because objectively I don't see how change cannot happen. I do not see a scenario where he would get demoted to, say, offensive line coach or another position, because then you'd have to fire an assistant. I definitely don't see a scenario where he gets moved all the way down to like an analyst role. So it's either he's going to leave the program completely and it's going to be a clean break, or he's going to stay and there aren't going to be any changes made.
Yeah, we talked about the Bill O'Brien hire at OC with the Patriots, so they are still figuring out what they're going to do with offensive line coach, and that certainly is a possibility. Again, got to keep monitoring whether Brian Flores gets a head coaching job somewhere. That's somebody that Brian's also connected to, Brian Ferentz. So percentage wise, I'm gonna, my percentage that there will be a change of offensive coordinator has been about 75. Leading up to this process, I still feel like it's above 50. So I'll say 60% chance that there is a change, that he leaves. I'm going to say about 20% each for the other 2. 20% no change at all. I just think John Budmeyer is going to have a full-time job with this program before long. He was essential to bring in Cade McNamara and Deacon Hill. I think there's something to get him involved with the program. So that's why I say there could be, maybe he gets elevated, maybe there's some shuffling, maybe there is a coach let go in this, that's not named Brian, and some responsibilities are divvied up. We will see. It is Kirk Ferentz's evaluation. And as I mentioned in my text group, I did talk to, it wasn't an interview, but I talked to Gary Barta in East Lansing, and he is number one. He's heard all of you that have reached out to him wanting him to fire Brian Ferentz. I can assure you he's heard those, gotten your emails, and
That's
heard
hilarious.
that.
That's so funny.
He knows, he's heard. So it's worked. And number two, he said Kirk was close in finishing his evaluation of the offensive staff. So it was not completed yet, according to just our non-interview conversation. I know, he has to answer to this, to whatever changes happen as well or not with Brian Ferentz as Brian's supervisor. And we will just see what happens. Hasn't been announced, but I believe there's going to be a presser on Wednesday with Kirk. That's what I was told last week for signing day. So that's where I'll leave it. I don't think I can be there, unfortunately, because of my injury, but still we'll write something from afar, and I'm sure we'll podcast. I know we'll podcast at some point. So you're going to have to ask the tough questions for me, Kennington. Like, why did you keep the offensive coordinator who's making $900,000 plus a year? Could you not get a better offensive coordinator for $1 million?
Right. I mean, well, my question, I really only have one question. So in my mind, obviously the first question is going to be what's happening at offensive coordinator. Maybe Kirk will just come out and say that he's staying. Maybe he'll say that he's doing an evaluation. The question that I have is a question that I've asked both on Twitter, and I think I said this on one of our last shows, is if you are keeping the coaching staff intact while adding a lot of players of need at certain positions, is it fair to say that you feel like you have the correct coaching staff and the player personnel has not been up to par? Mm-hmm. That's the question that I have. I feel like that's a fair one. That's the only thing that I can really deduce from how Iowa's coaching staff has been moving since the season ended. So that's my main question. And then to the Gary Barta point, I mean, it's funny because fans are reaching out to him and they're obviously frustrated. And you put him on the spot at the bowl game and said, Are you going to step over that line if Kirk were to retain Brian? It would be really interesting to see what would happen if he gets put into that pinch and if he does overstep that line versus not overstepping that line. And I think that there's a potential that the conversation could shift more so to him in that type of reflection than versus the decisions that Kirk makes, because if he were to keep Brian, I don't think anybody would be surprised, obviously.
Yeah, and there's names out there. I mean, Josh Gaddis is now free. We talked about that. Anyway, you have to think Josh Gaddis would be an upgraded offensive coordinator, right? I mean,
Broyles Award winner for sure.
I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, if you've got $1 million to spend on an offensive coordinator, a change would seem to be the right move in this case. But we will find out what happens with the Hawkeyes. Hopefully soon. But the NFL process could drag on a while too. And it could be a case where there's not a change this week, but there is 2 weeks from now. So, that is not out of the question either. So we're not necessarily going to have all the answers on Wednesday. That's just my feeling on it from what I know. So anyway, Kennington, we went long. Thank you, Hawkeye fans, for joining us on this YouTube pod. Thank you, my friend, for being so awesome and professional. You will be at the game tomorrow night, correct? Northwestern game? All right.
Yes,
I'll do some 5 thoughts, I guess, from afar. That's kind of my new thing. So. And then we'll have football stuff definitely by Wednesday, come hell or high water. So thanks for being there, man, and talk to you soon. Talk to you all soon. Any final words, Kennington, before we go?
I really hope that Kirk Ferentz has a presser on Wednesday. That's okay. Those are my final thoughts. I really hope that we get a chance to meet with him, because that presser alone is probably going to set us up for podcasting content for pretty much through the end of the month. Honestly, I mean, I think it's whatever he says one way or another, I think it's going to be polarizing, and I'm just looking forward to it. So really hope that we get a chance to connect with him on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think we will. Thank you, Kennington. Thank you, viewers, for Kennington Smith. I'm Chad Leistikow saying so long on this YouTube Hawk Central podcast. We'll be back with you soon. Take care.